Hi, Lester, Wushu Engineer. Many martial artists and self-defense professionals have recommended the use of backpacks, bags, and other shield-like objects in self-defense against various weapons, and I'm no different. I've often recommended that a backpack can be used to effectively improve one's chances of survival against attackers wielding various types of weapons. In Australia, self-defense is an appropriate legal defense, but only under certain conditions. Although the use of a justifiable level of force in the act of self-defense can be argued in a court of law, there are a great many restrictions and caveats to that. It's not an easy legal defense to apply, and it seems as though the victims of violent crime who successfully defend themselves are often scrutinized to a far greater degree than the perpetrators of the crime. Here, as in several other parts of the world, it is essentially illegal to carry weapons for use in self-defense. As such, I typically recommend that even items that are fairly innocuous but that could be classed as weapons, such as offensive keyrings, should not be carried or used at all. There are certain objects that I believe would be justifiable for use in self-defense because they are not actually weapons but function more as defensive objects. Objects such as pocket flashlights, backpacks, personal alarms, and discrete body-mounted cameras are not weapons, but can greatly assist in the act of self-defense and in the legal defense that will follow such an event. I performed a practical scientific investigation into the use of a powerful flashlight in self-defense and produced 2 videos about this topic, which you can reference at your leisure. The use of a backpack as a shield to ward off an attacker and to provide opportunities for the defender to counterattack or escape is pretty self-evident. However, I have never done an investigation into exactly how effective a backpack is in terms of warding off weapon-based attacks. So I decided to remedy that. In this video, I'm not going to go into details regarding techniques and fighting approaches when using a backpack or shield. Neither will I look at opponent tactics to reduce the effectiveness of the backpack shield, such as grasping the backpack and pulling it away. I'm merely going to look at how effective a backpack shield is at preventing weapon penetration and reducing impact force. I dredged up an old backpack of mine and slipped some old clothes into it. I then proceeded to test this against various weapons, primarily stabbing and slashing or cutting implements such as knives, swords, and spears, and against basic impact. So, the backpack that we're going to use for this series of tests, this is what the backpack looks like. It's an old backpack I've had for quite some time. I've taken it on a couple of international trips with me, and as you can see, I've had to do some repairs on it. So it was cheap when I bought it, cheap and nasty. And so I'm going to retire it, but I'll retire it in style and do this series of tests with it rather than just throwing it away. It is a backpack. It's a laptop backpack, so there is a compartment at the back for a laptop, and we're going to use that in the tests as well. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to stuff it full of old clothing. I typically wear training shirts until they start becoming way too aerated, falling off my back. And then they usually go to the workshop and they become rags. But in this case, these are going to be used for an altogether more exciting series of tests. And so what I'm going to do is I'm roughly going to either fold or just jumble them up and stick them in the front pocket of the backpack, along with my old pants. As you can see, they've got a self-righteous attitude. They've become a bit holier than thou, so they're going to now perform some tests for us. And then on some of the tests, I'm going to take this 2012 diary, which would represent either a diary or a notepad, and I'm going to stick this into the laptop compartment. I'll do some of the tests with just the clothing in the front pocket of the backpack, and I'll do some of the tests with the clothing in the front and with the 2012 diary at the back. So we'll see what kind of results we get out of that. I first performed several tests using the pendulum apparatus that I constructed for a previous video, investigating the effectiveness of commercially available stab-resistant armor. Check that video out for more details on the pendulum, but the apparatus is essentially a wooden pendulum of known weight and length, weighted down with an additional 5 kilograms. Blades and other impact projections can be mounted onto the front of the pendulum to perform consistent stab and impact-based tests. All tests were performed against the weapons dummy, which is basically a block of wood suspended by a chain and free to swing in response to impact. I believe this is a little more accurate than a rigid mount in this type of test because the human body will typically respond to impact by being pushed away by the impact force. I began the series of tests by using the pendulum apparatus instead of manual strikes to enable us to start with some consistent and repeatable tests that eliminated as much of the human element as we could in terms of weapon use, impact energy and force, etc. The first tests that I performed were impact-based tests against the load cell to ascertain whether the backpack would reduce peak impact force from impact-based weapons such as clubs, baseball bats, kicks and punches. And this is what those tests looked like. Alright, I'm just going to use I'm going to use 45 degrees for all of this. Okay, you ready? 45 degrees. 45 degrees. And then I think that's done. You ready? 45 degrees. Okay, 1. Okay. Alright. 45 degrees, you ready? 45 degrees, you ready? 2. 45 degrees, you ready? 3. 45 degrees, you ready? 4. After performing some comparative tests without the backpack, with the backpack containing just clothes, and with the backpack containing clothes and a hardcover diary, several trends became apparent. As you can see in these graphs, the average peak force without the backpack was approximately 600 newtons. With the backpack containing clothes was approximately 180 newtons, and with the backpack containing clothes and the hardcover diary was approximately 190 newtons. The backpack containing clothes reduced the average peak impact force by approximately 70%, a very significant reduction that could significantly reduce the risk of impact injury to the defender. It was also clear that in both cases in which the backpack containing clothes was concerned, the peak impact force increased as impacts occurred, implying that the clothes were becoming more compressed during the tests, thus reducing the backpack's effectiveness over time. There were no real significant differences between the performance of the backpack containing just clothes and containing clothes and the hardcover diary, as expected, because the diary, being relatively rigid, provides no real additional padding. However, it should be borne in mind that in actual use, having a rigid insert in a backpack will improve the impact performance by helping to spread the impact over a larger surface area. This is something that cannot be measured using a simple load cell because it does not measure force per unit area, merely total force exerted on the front plate. Next, I performed some stab tests using the pendulum with a Tanto point combat knife, the GI Tanto knife from Cold Steel, mounted onto the front. And this is what those tests look like. So I'm going to be using a simple piece of paper stuck to the foam target to ascertain whether the knife penetrated the backpack or not. We'll be able to tell once I remove the piece of paper whether the knife has actually gone through or not. Okay, as soon as it's stable, go. So we'll try that again. Stable. Go. Try that again. Just stabilize it. Okay, I'm going to go for 65 degrees now. Those two were 45, I'll go for 65. Go. Okay. The deadly apparatus. Looks like that last thrust dislodged the knife, but it still made contact with the back. Okay, so don't stand behind it. Check. And here's the piece of paper. 0 penetrations, and that's just with clothing in the back of the bag. So I don't have the diary in here. I just have clothing stuffed in the front of the bag. That's all. That's quite surprising.
Yeah, that's good.
Okay, so we're going to just do a few more tests, and I'm going to try and go for between 65 and 75 degrees. As soon as it's stable, just move away. Okay, 75. As soon as it's stable, move away. Okay. 75, or thereabouts. And one more. As soon as it's stable, just make sure it's not swinging. And 75 or thereabouts. Okay. Again.
Nothing.
0 penetration. Again. Just a bunch of clothes. Just a bunch of clothes stuck in a backpack. That's all it is. I was very surprised by the results based on my previous tests using commercial stab-resistant armor. The backpack containing only clothes outperformed pretty much everything that I tested in that previous video. Even starting with the pendulum at 65 degrees, the knife did not even come close to penetrating past the first compartment of the backpack. With the success of these tests, I did not consider it necessary to step up the protection by including the hardcover diary. After this success, I did a variety of manual stabbing and slashing/cutting tests using various bladed weapons. This is what those tests looked like. Okay, so So we've done the formal standardized tests, or we've tried to standardize those stab tests and also impact tests as well as we could using a pendulum arrangement. So now we'll have a look at some stabs and slashes applied manually. And I've actually had a viewer comment in the past on the unscientific method used when applying slashes, and that I should also attach that to a pendulum or something like that. And I'd like to explain why I can't do that. I'll use, as an example, I'll use this kukri machete from Cold Steel. When I'm slashing with the kukri machete, I'm not just moving the blade sideways, as most people who use bladed weapons, either in Hemo and other martial arts, will be able to tell you. So it's not just some kind of sideways motion. There's far more nuance to a slash to the side, and there are many different ways that you can do it, but often it involves drawing the belly of the blade across the target. So that would be very difficult to do using some form of machine. You'd have the programming behind that is possible, and it's been demonstrated using. I think there was a demonstration in Japan a short while ago with an industrial robot that mimicked the movement of a katana wielder chopping through various objects. But that movement is not easy to do with a small budget. You would need to have a carefully programmed robot in order to mimic the fine control of the blade. So I can't do that. I have to do that manually. So I'm gonna try some slashing and some stabbing using three different implements. I will use the kukri machete. I'll also use the Wushu Scientists GI Tanto, which is also from Cold Steel, I believe, and which is of course the blade that I was using in the standardized tests. And I will use my my dao, and I'll do some slashing and potentially some stabbing with it. No penetrations on the paper. This was a tear because it got stuck in part of the bag and got ripped. As you can see, it's a tear due to one of the impacts, but no penetration at all. So we'll have a look at what the bag looks like. Can you see? As you can no doubt see, a lot of surface damage on the front of the bag. Cuts down the side from when it was swinging and I was cutting. And this is all that was in it. Bunch of old clothes. 1, 2, 3 t-shirts and a pair of self-righteous holier than thou shorts. And it did not get through that layer at all. Yeah. I'm not sure if you can see inside past that first layer. No penetration past the first layer. So it didn't even, none of those thrusts or tests even made it into the back pocket. Okay, so really, actually, I had my suspicions, but actually quite surprising how effective just a backpack full of a few odds and ends of clothing is in terms of protecting you against stabs, slashes, and impacts.
Just have a look at how totally the clothes are.
Well, you won't be able to tell because they were holy to begin
They
with.
were, yeah. Not much.
You can actually see.
I see some.
You can see on this T-shirt there are a couple of stab wounds.
Yeah, and this one too.
Yeah, this T-shirt might have been in the front.
Yeah, look at that.
So it got a couple of stabs and slashes coming through, but
Yeah.
really quite interesting. So I forgot about my titanium folding spear as far as the backpack tests are concerned. So we're going to give the backpack another go using the titanium folding spear. This is a piece of old corrugated iron. It's been on the property for some time. It's quite tough. And just to establish that this can penetrate things, there you go. Alright, so now we've established that it can penetrate things, let's have a go at the backpack. You recording?
Mm-hmm.
One more. Look. Okay. There's one small penetration there behind the clothing. And it made it through, just made it through into the back pocket, but didn't go much further than that. So that's the final bit, final mark, final penetration point. Nothing went through. So, quite impressive for an old backpack stuffed with even older clothing. I just could not get any penetration. I was getting a bit frustrated, so I took the backpack up the hill and shot it with a 12 gauge shotgun loaded with 9 pellet buckshot. This is what that test looked like.
Wow, that's pretty
And
impressive.
smashed one of the straps into it.
I think we've got 9 penetrations coming out that way as well, unfortunately. So,
Yeah.
Nope. You are not safe using a backpack full of clothes and a 2012 diary against a shotgun.
Surprise, surprise.
So it has limits, people, but interesting nonetheless. So clearly there are limits, and a backpack stuffed with clothes and a diary will not protect you against a shotgun. I was still not satisfied because all of the stabbing tests were performed with blades that were not optimized for stabbing. These tests are still relevant because specialized stabbing weapons are not as commonly used in crimes as Bowie-style knives or kitchen knives for that matter. In addition, many specialized stabbing knives such as stilettos, switchblades, and two-edged stabbing daggers are essentially illegal in many parts of Australia, further reducing the odds of encountering them in a self-defense situation. However, I wanted to perform a test using a more stab-centric weapon. So I modified the titanium spear tip of my folding titanium spear so that it more closely resembled the tip of a Roman pilum. This reduced its width so that there would be less potential for frictional forces to impede its penetration. And this is what the tip looked like before and after modification. I then treated it with PTFE/Teflon coating to improve its ability to penetrate a target. See my previous video on can PTFE/Teflon coating improve weapon cutting performance for further details on that and why that was important. Once the spear was ready, I performed a final round of stabbing tests against the backpack. Now bear in mind that when I performed this last set of tests, the backpack had been stabbed, cut, and shot, so it was in a shocking state of repair. This is what those tests looked like. Clearly, the modified stabbing tip treated with PTFE was easily able to penetrate the backpack containing clothes only. So I performed an additional set of tests with the backpack containing clothes and the 2016 hardcover diary. And this is what those tests looked like. The specialized stabbing spear did not penetrate the backpack containing both clothes and the diary. This is what the spear impact points on the diary looked like. So, as I said for the shotgun test, a backpack definitely has limits in terms of the protection that it can offer you in a self-defense situation involving armed aggressors. Against an aggressor armed with a blade optimized for stabbing, a backpack containing merely clothes will not provide sufficient protection to fully prevent penetration. However, it could still be used to interfere with stabbing vectors and can be used to hook or impede the weapon, reducing the opponent's odds of getting in a definitive cut or stab. Against opponents armed with conventional knives and machetes, though, the backpack containing only clothes should provide more than adequate protection to prevent full penetration. Slipping a tough insert into the backpack, such as a hardcover A4 diary as used in these tests, or a sheet of appropriate composite plastic such as G10 glass fiber laminate, would increase its level of protection to the point where, short of an opponent shooting you with a firearm, the backpack should be nearly impenetrable. After performing all of these tests, I am still confident in recommending that backpacks and bags can be effective defensive tools in a self-defense situation involving armed attackers, significantly increasing a defender's chances of survival if deployed and used skillfully. I hope you enjoyed this video, and I'll see you all again next time. Cheers.